What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Seth, and we are back again some more Trove, and today we're going to be talking about U10's release date. But then on top of that, we're going to be talking about the most recent update that they just threw onto the test server on December 14th. And let me tell you, it's absolutely disgusting. And unfortunately, this little tiny update, this little small change that the devs ended up making, ultimately makes U10 useless. I'll kind of explain that in a little bit more detail as we get to it, but first of all, let's just answer that age-old question that so many of you guys are constantly wondering, myself included, is when is U10 actually going to end up being released? So, we actually have a confirmation that U10 is going to have separate release dates for both PC and console. PC players are going to be able to play the U10 update next Tuesday. That's right, not even a week away, and we're going to be able to actually have all this stuff on the live server, which is pretty cool, man. Like, I'm actually really excited about it. So it's going to be coming out December 18th, and then the day after, on the Wednesday, we're going to see the Snowfest winter event show up. I don't know whether or not that winter event, I would assume that that's coming out on console, even though the U10 update is not going to end up showing out on console until January of 2019 and February 2019 at the latest, if they don't get it out in time. Yeah. Now, one thing that could end up happening with this change, I know that you console players are already super frustrated about even hearing that there's going to be a separate release, despite what they ended up promising us earlier in the year, but lots of stuff has ended up happening with Trove, with the development, and with the developers themselves, you know. With Game Ago taking over and so many people getting laid off from Trine Worlds being completely dissolved, blah, 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 blah. You already know all this stuff. But it's like, to think all of that combined and having the separate release date means that hopefully us PC players are going to kind of be beta testers, because despite the fact that they've actually changed quite a bit about the U10 update on the test server, not all the changes have actually been good. And more in particular, the updates that we're going to be talking about today are absolutely disgusting. I just do not agree with it at all. It's so gross. So we'll get into it. But otherwise, I wanted to kind of briefly talk about the blog that they ended up mentioning. You know, I'll put a link in the description so you guys can read this. I think this is hilarious. Most of all because the update, you know, the blog itself very shortly explains that there's going to be the new Uber difficulty. And basically they try to act like there's more content in this update than there is. They say that there is 3 new biomes, which there isn't. There's 1 new biome, and then there's 3 different generations of the biome. I don't know if they fully understand how it works in video games, but seriously, they never lied before. It's not like when the Forbidden Spires came out and the 3 different generations of that biome. It's not like they lied and said that was 3 different biomes, right? Like, we've got 1 new biome, 3 different generations. So anyways, who cares about that? That's just me nitpicking. But then they talk about, you know, the new Uber difficulty U10, 5-star dungeons, which, by the way, I want to mention that 3-star dungeons can now actually spawn in the Geotop side. So that's pretty cool, because they're actually really nice dungeons themselves. They weren't doing that before. And then they go on to say that there are 2 new stats introduced to Trove, light and dark, which not really. The only one that we are as players are going to end up seeing is the light stat, because the dark stat basically is an armor value stat that the enemies have in the world, and the light stat is our armor penetration to that armor defense that these enemies have, which even then, it's nothing more than what Ultra Shadow Towers already delivers, but now it's actually just in a normal Uber difficulty and has a stat value that can end up lowering their armor and making us actually do more damage to them. Unfortunately, it's not going to affect anywhere else in the game. Originally, they were planning to end up having light affect other areas of the game, and originally we were able to get the dark or armor stat value on our gear, but it seems like they ended up just going back on that whole idea. So anyways, they talk about crystal gear and then the new rarity of gear, like crystal going up to 1 to 3. They actually say that you can get it from loot chests and defeating dungeon bosses on the geode surface. Literally everything on geode topside can drop crystal, even normal enemies. And then they go on to talk about the gems. So they changed a few of the different mechanics where they removed gems being able to crack, so you don't need to always use lucky clovers. It's just going to slowly end up building up your gem karma now, which is nice. They also ended up briefly mentioning the new contained chaos flare. So essentially what this new item is going to do for gems is it's good and bad. what it can end up doing is you're going to end up crafting 2 Chaos Sparks, which is the gem re-roller that costs Binding Darkness and Lunar Souls, which is time-gated. And Binding Darkness is just difficult to get for me for some reason. But anyways, the Contained Chaos Flare is going to cost 2 of them. And what it essentially is going to do is be able to take any of the pearls that you see behind my head here, any of the pearls on a gem. What it's essentially going to do is take one of these pearls randomly and throw them onto another stat. So that combined with gem re-rollers should make making gems the ideal stats a little bit better. Like for a gem like this that I've got fully maxed out, you can't actually re-roll the light stat value. So I would want to actually use the Contained Chaos Flare instead, to hopefully roll the pearls off of my crit damage and physical and stuff and get it onto the light stat value, which even then it's going to be random. So it's RNG on RNG, dude. Like, you're trying to get the Binding Darkness in the first place to get 2 of the re-rollers so that you can end up getting 1 of these, and it's not even going to end up giving you the stats that you want. Obviously, the devs have an absolute obsession with RNG and not actually letting us roll what we want. Like, seriously, it should just give it to us. So anyways, then they go on to say that there's a couple new dragons, and funny enough, I know that this is kind of being a bit of a jerk, but I just think it's hilarious how in that blog post it says, it goes on to say that there is way too many changes to talk about in one blog post, so be sure to check the patch notes coming soon, which I think is hilarious because this blog post, while short, literally summarizes the entire update. Like, there literally is nothing more than what they end up talking about in this post. Obviously, they don't go into more detail about like crystal gear and how much it costs to like level it up and everything like that. That's what I'm here for. But you know, I just think that it's hilarious how they're trying to act like there's more coming with this update than there is, when to summarize the entire U10 update, we've got the geode surface, U10, crystal gear, new gems, new dragons. That's it. Like, seriously. So anyways, let's move on to the patch notes themselves and why this actually makes U10 utterly useless. So basically, this new resource called Crystal Cores, which is going to end up being used for a whole bunch of things. It's going to be used for crafting all the new costumes and stuff like that, but more importantly, is going to be used for upgrading your crystal gear. So if we try to upgrade the crystal gear right here, you can see the crystalline core right here. It's I've got 45 of them, and it's going to cost 4. So they've ended up nerfing the amount of crystal cores that it costs to upgrade crystal 2 and 1, but they seem to have messed up on crystal 3 because I actually have like older screenshots of all of the different levels on the crystal 3 gear, and this is actually more expensive crystal core wise to level up the crystal 3. So why is this relevant? Because they basically made crystalline cores kind of time gated. Yeah, and obviously the reason why they did this is because the cash shop is going to end up having this new cash. It's going to be a new box that you can end up buying, and this box is not only going to offer you tradable versions of the new mounts and costumes and stuff like that, but it's also going to end up giving you some of the geode topside resources, including crystalline cores. So it's just a cash grab. That's why they ended up making this very disappointing change. So normally you would complete these 5-star dungeons and it didn't matter what difficulty you're in, and you would end up getting lesser crystal cache, or lesser geode cache, let's call it, right? And out of these geode cache, the lesser ones, you could end up getting like maybe 1 crystalline core, 5, 10, 25 at a rare. And originally these boxes actually had gem augmenting items, gem re-rollers. They've actually changed it, removed all the re-rollers and augmenters, and they've changed it so that they can actually drop Binding Darkness, or not Binding Darkness, Bound Brilliance, which is a required resource that has otherwise been completely time gated in order to end up buying and crafting all of the focus items, which is required to actually upgrade your gems, which it's disgusting, dude. Like, it really is what they ended up changing with Bound Brilliance. It's gross. But anyways, whatever. At least they're in these boxes. Now, the way that the crystalline cores work, which again is going to be required to upgrade your crystal gear, is you're going to be able to complete a 5-star dungeon fast enough and you'll end up getting a gold reward. This gold reward is going to reward you with 8 crystalline cores, and you can only get the gold tiered reward once per day out of a 5-star dungeon. Doesn't matter if you're in U8, U9, or U10. So honestly, I would recommend go to U8, get these dailies out of the way, because then there's going to be the silver, which is going to give you 3 crystalline cores, and you can get the silver reward twice a day. But then the bronze core, the bronze reward, that apparently you're going to be able to get endlessly, and that's going to reward you 1 crystalline core. Now, as of right now, the version of Trove that I'm playing on the test server, I think is broken, because these the lesser geode caches, they go on to mention that they've actually moved them over, and they're supposed to drop from enemies that spawn within 5-star dungeons, which, I mean, we're talking about the same people that couldn't get the Starfire fragments to drop in Shadow Towers properly, so I'm pretty sure that they messed up with this one, especially when Merc and I ended up grinding maybe an hour or 2 of non-stop just 5-star dungeons, and we didn't see a single of the lesser caches. However, despite the fact that it says in the patch notes that for the bronze reward, you're going to end up getting 1 crystalline core, instead, we're actually getting a 1 lesser geode topside cache. Now, this isn't bad. I would actually prefer if this is the mechanic, because these caches can end up dropping more than 1 crystalline core per cache, right? Because if they make it otherwise, where you can only end up getting 1 crystalline core per, you literally need hundreds of thousands of crystalline cores, not only to upgrade your crystal gear in general, but also to craft all the new costumes and mounts and stuff like that. So technically speaking, it's not necessarily time gated, like I said earlier, but it does mean that you would literally have to grind thousands of 5-star dungeons just to end up maxing out your crystal gear on a couple characters, and never mind even talking about all the other stuff you would end up crafting. Like, thankfully, it doesn't cost that much to upgrade like a Crystal 1. It's 4 of them. So that's 4 5-star dungeons. You can get that done in maybe 15 minutes, if not 20 minutes, depending on how powerful you are and how much light you have, how much cosmic gems you have, blah, 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 blah. But this is the whole thing that gets me so frustrated about this little change, is clearly they just did it with the cash shop in mind and didn't think for 1 second about the actual player base, because that's like hundreds of thousands of hours spent just to end up grinding this new crystal gear with very little reward for it. Because the whole thing is that you would grind the crystal gear mostly so that you would be more powerful in U10, because then you could end up getting yourself crystal 3 at the rarest drop, and also you'd be strong enough to be able to take on the 5-star dungeon. So basically what this entire update and Trove's end game gets broken down into is you get strong enough so that you can grind U10, and the reason why you grind U10 is to hopefully get a set of Crystal 3 gear that you can end up having and swapping between your characters. For a true endgame player like myself, I'm going to try and get Crystal 3 gear on all of my characters, but this is something that's going to be a process and take a long time, and I'm not too worried about it. Now, the thing is that once you end up having the amount of Crystal 3 gear that you need for your other characters, let's say you have 2 sets. You've got 1 set of crystal hat and face, both magic damage, and then you have another set that's both physical damage, and then you have maybe a crystal 3 weapon for your 2 main characters, your physical based character and your magic based character, right? Essentially, that's all you would really need. Anything further than that is just overkill, and you can end up using Crystal 1 gear on all of your characters anyway, so it's perfectly fine. But the thing is that Crystal 3 gear costs so many crystalline cores to end up upgrading, more so than it used to, in fact. It says that it was nerfed, but clearly it wasn't. I tweeted them out these numbers to tell them, you guys kind of messed up on your calculations. But anyways, once you end up getting that amount of Crystal 3 out of the way, then I would actually recommend you go back to U8 just to grind out the crystalline cores, because it's going to be easier to complete the 5-star dungeons in U8 than it is in U10, and there's no distinguishable advantage of being in U10 other than having the opportunity of having Crystal 3 gear drop. So the end game of Trove is grind the Crystal 3 gear that you need from U10, or get strong enough for that in the first place, go back to U8, finish upgrading that Crystal 3 gear, and then go back to grinding your tomes, but more than likely you just grind those out in U8. So U8 is the new actual end game because of this. And what I'm hoping happens out of having this video and talking about this so seriously and passionately is I'm hoping that the devs take a hint and actually change this for the better, rather than what we all kind of know is more than likely going to happen. If they change anything, they're just going to make it so that U8 is nerfed rather than making U10 actually more worthwhile. But I mean, who knows what'll happen? We just gotta wait and see. Time will tell. But as of right now, it's fairly frustrating that they would end up making a change like this from under our noses just for the sake of making a couple bucks out of the greater caches. Now, here's the thing, guys. I was gonna buy a bunch of the greater geode caches anyways. They didn't have to do this, you know, because it's like I already have some numbers right here. 1,400 crystal cores is what's required to craft like all of the costumes and mounts and stuff like that. That is not including the new geode style stash recipes, which are clearly broken because those cost 50 each, and there's over 100 new geode styles, so that's insane. But then on top of it, forging up the gear, like the crystal 3 bow that I'm rocking right now, just to put it into perspective, for getting the first star it was 30 crystalline cores, and then for getting the second star it was another 30 crystalline cores. Whereas with this new system that they have in place, level 1 of this other 3-star bow, the first star right here, that cost me 25 crystalline cores. So okay, they ended up nerfing it by 5, but now to get it to the second star it costs 50, which overall that's more crystalline core requirement to upgrade crystal 3 gear, and that's with crystalline cores being nerfed and being more difficult to attain. So they really got to change this, dude. Like, it's crazy. Anyways, I don't mean to rant longer than I need to, folks. I just really want them to actually make a change that is something that the players actually want. Because honestly, when the U10 update first came out on the PTS, it was kind of unbalanced and kind of broken, but I actually really liked it. It was very easy to get the crystal gear that you needed, and even upgrading the crystal gear, yeah, I was able to upgrade my full crystal 3 set on one character, and I was able to do that within the course of maybe a couple days, and most of all that was just finding the resource itself and then grinding the 5-star dungeons. Now, top that with the fact that there are so many different characters in the game, and I was thinking, hey, they actually did a pretty good job with the numbers, because it's still going to require a lot of time to end up maxing out all of the characters. But now with this new change and this new dumb resource being as you know, difficult to attain as it is, like if we're just talking about only getting the bronze 1 crystalline core per 5-star dungeon, that means we have to grind over 2,000 like 5-star dungeons just to max out you know, just to get all the costumes, mounts, and then max out a couple pieces of crystal gear. No thanks, guys. Let alone if you want to try and get it on all of your characters, good luck. But at least they ended up buffing crystal gear, but honestly it's not strong enough considering the amount of time and effort that they want to warrant players to go into. Now, that said, what I would recommend for most of you guys, the average Trove player, get to U8, get yourself Crystal 1 gear, because it is going to end up being better than Stellar when you max it out anyways, and it's honestly very, very affordable. Even Crystal 2 is fairly easy to forge up all the way, and then Crystal 3 suddenly is just an absolute joke. In either case, I'm very excited about this update. I think it is going to end up being pretty cool just because it adds more grinding to the game, and I'm always down for something like that, dude. In either case, thanks for watching, everybody. Let me know your opinions on this stuff in the comments down below. Sorry this video was longer than it needed to be, but that's why I wanted to touch upon the release date at the beginning of the video and then talk about my opinion about this recent change a little bit in the later half for those of you that actually care about my rants. But in any case, thanks for watching. Very much appreciate it. Don't forget to like, sub, hit that notification bell. It helps me out very much. And if you want to go the extra mile of supporting me, you can always sponsor the YouTube channel with the join button, buy some of the real life merch, which is in the description. Or if you don't have any money, still want to help me out, check the link down below to Gawkbox, which is a way you can donate to me for free by basically playing phone games for a few minutes. Sayonara, and stay epic, everybody.